MacSharry.
Thanks very much, Last Corla, and I want to congratulate my colleague Martin Kenny for his innovation of bringing this bill forward, which I wholeheartedly support, and reject the amendment, which I'll speak to in a moment. To commence, I want to acknowledge the presence in the gallery of probably the best qualified person, rather than any of the elected representatives here from all parties, and none, Francis McDevitt, a planner from North County Leitrim, who's only too aware of the difficulties, on the one hand, of policy as it is at the moment, and the opportunities there are in reaching the government's own target of 75% of future growth outside Dublin. Also, from that area, we have Councillor Shona Logan and Councillor Pádraig Fallon, all of whom will have, through their constituency work, day in, day out, come across families who have been prevented from realising their dream and, to my mind, their right of being able to build in their local area because of the interpretation of the rules at the moment and the lack of flexibility in embracing the technology and solutions that are available to us. Minister, the amendment, and because Fianna Fáil have been in government so long and I'm around these houses so long, I recognise it as the usual three-card trick that comes in, backed up by officials, where ministers give sponsoring TDs for private members' legislation the superficial pat on the back while they kick it down the road never to be seen again. The reality is the policies you speak of, and Ireland 2040 and 75% of development outside Dublin, are all very well. But the reality in the here and now is people actually live in County Leitrim. And I know that might sound strange to some people who prefer to see the west of Ireland as somewhere where we can go for weekends or on holidays when the weather is good. Expect to see Peg Sayers looking out over a half door smoking a pipe and a pint of Guinness. No, we've had running water there for some time, Minister, and I can assure you that the people and communities there, specifically throughout County Leitrim, that is the most badly affected, but as Deputy Scanlon and others have said, also in County Donegal, Sligo, West Cavan and indeed parts of Roscommon as well. So the policies that you're pursuing, while it's talking the talk and sounds great in many ways, I'm afraid the scheduling of these policies is contradictory. On the one hand, we want to kick it down the road for the Rural Water Review Group and the new revised Code of Practice at the EPA, all things that may happen at some time in the future. My view is, why would the tail wag the dog? What's going to happen here, because we are supporting this legislation, is it is going to committee. So my advice, Minister, is that you would contact the Rural Water Review Group and the EPA and say, the Parliament have passed legislation to committee stage. Redouble your efforts. Prioritise, because we want to get this into committee in the short term, in acknowledgement of the fact that people do live in the northwest. Young families do want to build houses on their family land. Young farmers want to build houses so they can cater for the small farms that they have. The contradictory, and one of the real ironies to me, is that on one hand we promote the very real necessity to protect our environment and the challenges of climate change. It might be worth pointing out, in the media today we've heard of the 8 million tonnes per annum of plastic that ends up in our oceans. Well, I can confidently tell you, Minister, not an ounce of that 8 million tonnes comes from County Leitrim. So you know what? Maybe we owe it to them to begin to take and introduce some measures that will support them living, because they have small coastline, and I can assure you not an ounce of that plastic can be attributed to the families that are living there for many generations, and their children are entitled to live there too. The other irony is, while we want to maintain the health of our water table, and that is admirable, Deputy Kenny and Scanlon and others have pointed out and supported that ambition. But in the meantime, we're quite happy to promote, and while I realise that as a nation we want to reach a target for forestry of 17%, and we're only around 11 at the moment, and I support that, but in County Leitrim, more than 50% of agricultural land is already populated by an invasive species supported by your and other previous governments, where 35 million Sitka spruce trees are now in place. And due to airborne fertilisation, we have pollution with phosphorus, nitrogen, and I'm sure I get the pronunciation wrong, cypermethrin, all of which are threatening the water table there. We're also threatening traditional methods of farming. So on one hand, we're shoving our entire target of forestry down Leitrim's throat. On the other, we're saying live horse and get grass. And at some stage, in about 150 years, when we get around to looking after the gin and tonic belts first, maybe we'll throw an odd bone of placation to the people of County Leitrim, Sligo, Donegal and North Roscommon, as I said. So to conclude, let me advise you that this is going to pass second stage. Let me appeal to you to lift the phone as the proactive minister I know you can and are, to the EPA and the Rural Water Review Group, and say, your Parliament that's supposed to run the country have passed legislation, so we're going to need your revised Code of Conduct and your report from the Rural Water Review Group by the 1st of January, so that this policy, in the interest of the people of the North West, can become law. Thank you.